Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. I'm your host, and with me in part two of a special two-part series is General John Allen. General, again, thank you.
Great to be with you, Aaron.
It's always a pleasure. All right, we were talking about Daesh. Let's talk about how they're armed and the fact that when they did sweep through Iraq in particular, they got a tremendous amount of armaments, equipment, machinery that we had provided Iraq. Have we essentially armed them?
Well, I think you can say that by virtue of having access to that equipment, which is equipment that we provided to the Iraqis, obviously there was no intent by the United States to arm them, but the consequence, of course, is that reality. Daesh can parade its equipment, but whether Daesh can use the equipment is an entirely different issue. And some of that equipment is pretty sophisticated, and they have yet to prove their capacity to employ some of those systems.
I'm just out of curiosity, as a non-military person, do we have the ability to manufacture equipment so that if it gets into the wrong hands, we can essentially...
We do.
And do we do that, or do we not?
Not routinely for equipment that this kind of equipment is not routinely designed to have what we call fences on it. The fence could be geographic, the fence could be time.
Or a code or something?
Yeah, that's right. So, at some point if the battery goes down, it's not replaceable. Or if you move it past a certain location, it can't be used again. But that's a capability. Whether we would apply that ultimately to general purpose equipment, which is what this is, we didn't, and we wouldn't normally.
Well, obviously there'd be a significant increase in cost too, I'm sure.
Well, sure, and we don't normally provide equipment to our security partners with the expectation that they're going to give it up in large amounts to a potential enemy.
I would hope not.
No, we don't, obviously. So this was unique. Daesh did, in fact, turn some of that equipment around. The Humvees, the high mobility multi-wheeled vehicles that you saw us in Iraq, turned out to be pretty helpful to them. But some of the heavier equipment, heavier armor, was less useful to them, and they had difficulties in employing it.
What can we do, you think, right now to help the Iraqis? And clearly, and talk a little bit politically, but
Sure.
You mentioned the previous premier, Maliki, who did not move in the right direction, to put it politely.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of our strategy ultimately is to help to stabilize Iraq right now, because there can be no long-term fix for Daesh. Daesh is a symptom of a bigger issue. There can be no long-term fix for Daesh unless we have true political reconciliation inside Iraq. And so part of our effort is dedicated to assisting Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, Prime Minister Abadi, and his government, both to create capacity for governance, but to help them to extend the rule of law and the writ of government back across the Sunni provinces that have been lost to Daesh. So it's our intent to help him politically as much as we possibly can. They're suffering a companion problem right now, which is a really severe economic problem. And that economic problem is the price of oil. Much of the economy, most of the economy of Iraq is an oil-based economy. And so as the price of oil continues at historic lows, and as much of Iraq's oil production and oil infrastructure remains offline because of activities of Daesh, it's been a double whammy, if you will, in terms of the economic blow. So there are political challenges, there are economic challenges, and then there are the security challenges, and we're seeking to help Iraq in all of those areas.
Does candidly, do the current political borders of Iraq make sense?
Well, that was an interesting conversation we had very early along in this process. These borders were historically drawn in the aftermath of World War I in something called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And they were borders that were largely drawn by people that don't live in the region.
And especially given your knowledge of the tribes in the whole region.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if in the aftermath of World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled this component, this aspect of the Middle East for hundreds of years. If you had asked the Shia element of the region, the Shia concentration, or the Sunni concentration, or the Kurdish concentration, how would you like to draw the borders of the post-World War I, post-Ottoman region? Chances are pretty good they would not have said, we'll draw it this way. So the question that we had to embrace first and foremost was, is the reality of the Sykes-Picot gone? In other words, should we now seek to restore the region with different borders? And the borders may change someday, but our initial approach has been to restore the territorial integrity of the political entity of Iraq. And then if at some point in the future there may be some reordering of the political relationships within Iraq that could change the borders, that's fine. That's in the future. In the short term, it is our objective, our military and political objective, to work closely with the central government in Baghdad to restore the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of the government of Iraq. It's also our objective with regard to Syria as well, but that's a much more complex and difficult problem for now.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back to Syria with General John Allen.
As Iran, over time, has to account for this youthful population, that increasingly will have its own opinion about the direction from which Iran has emerged and the direction that Iran should pursue, I think we're going to see changes in Iran's behavior. But there is enormous mistrust in the region of Iran as a revolutionary entity, of Iran as a purveyor of terrorism, as Iran as the signal leader of the Shia bloc of the faith of Islam, attempting to wield the Shia confession.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scenes photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more, to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe as I do in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today.
Hi, I'm Wyland, Artist of the Sea.
I'm Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel.
I'm Madeline Albright.
I'm T. Boone Pickens.
I'm Mike Hayden.
I'm Congressman John Lewis.
I'm Jane Harmon.
I'm Carrie Hessler-Radley.
Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harper Show.
I'm John King, CNN's Chief National Correspondent. Take it from me. Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harper Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harper Show and Keep Hope Alive.
Welcome back to the show. This is part two of a special two-part series with General and Special Presidential Envoy John Allen, and we're talking about Syria. Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say, and you and I have talked about this before, I mean, that we had a great opportunity early in the revolt, as it were, in Syria when moderate forces seemed to be really at a point where they could overthrow the Assad government. We didn't assist them, which I think many people felt was a mistake. Are we going to have another opportunity like that, or is Assad going to be part of the final answer there and stay in power?
Let me rephrase your question slightly, and that is that Assad had a great opportunity early along in this process.
To leave?
No, to embrace the legitimate political concerns of his people. And rather than to embrace them as other leaders in the region did during the so-called Arab Spring, he chose to attack them. And he killed them in large numbers. He alienated the population. He created widespread resistance movements, which gave birth to and now we see Jabhat al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda oriented organization. We have Daesh. We have moderate and armed Syrian opposition elements that are fighting the regime every single day. They're fighting each other every single day. So I think the lost opportunity was really Bashar al-Assad's. The United States has been unambiguous that it's our intention to support the legitimate political concerns of the Syrian people. There are not insignificant components of that population that we are prepared to support, that we do support. And under no circumstances do we see the political solution in Syria including Bashar al-Assad. So the process by which that transition occurs is one that we seek to be a political process. The military activity in the field today, which is tragic, the numbers vary in terms of the numbers of dead in Syria, somewhere between 230 and perhaps 250,000. I've seen numbers even higher than that.
You've also seen on a even additional order of magnitude numbers as far as refugees are concerned.
Well, that's right. We have.
That's something I don't think the American people are really cognizant
Well,
of.
we have not seen a refugee crisis in one region this bad since World War II. Now that is really significant, where really substantial populations in two countries, Iraq and Syria, either have taken refugee status or are internally displaced, and a huge number of these people are. So for example, what we call the frontline states, Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, have taken in millions of people. The Turks, we don't know exactly, they estimate it could be as high as 2 million that they have taken in. And they have largely supported these Syrian refugees on their own, and they deserve a lot of our international support and applause, frankly, for the generosity in taking these people in. Lebanon's population, the population in Lebanon in terms of the numbers of Syrian refugees has been variously estimated to be as much as 40% of the people inside the geographic boundaries of Lebanon.
Extraordinary.
And Jordan suffers a similar challenge in taking care of these people. All three of those governments are doing all that they can to take care of those populations. The international community, through the United Nations, has been asked to try to step up and provide funding to the humanitarian assistance, and that's a real problem, Aaron. The UN, some of the most important programs that they use in the region to provide support to these refugee populations, some of those programs are going to run out of money and cease. And so when you hear me talk, you hear the United States government talk, and the United States government has given billions of dollars in support. We're constantly talking about the international community's responsibility to support the UN and other philanthropic organizations and NGOs in providing support to these refugee populations. So Bashar al-Assad is the one who missed the opportunity. And now we have to do all we can to support those Syrian elements that can be a constructive part of the future. And that future does not include Bashar al-Assad.
Well, he's obviously supported by Russia, he's supported by Iran. With the changing relationship between the United States and Iran, what are your expectations over the next decade, including Syria?
Well, it's hard to say right now. What is important to say is that the conversation that just concluded in Vienna was about a nuclear weapon. It was about preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon in the foreseeable future. I'll have to tell you that my own military background, as the deputy commander at CENTCOM, I was single-mindedly focused on that issue. And postponing any potential for Iran to have a nuclear capability is a really important outcome. It makes countries in the region more secure. It doesn't solve the problem indefinitely because there are time horizons, but that gives us time to do other things. But it denies Iran a nuclear weapon which could abet other activities under a nuclear umbrella that none of us want to see. So that's an important outcome.
With that outcome, why such vehement opposition to the agreement? No, I mean, what would be a viable alternative to the agreement?
I think the president has said, I'm happy to listen to your viable agreements, your viable alternatives.
More sanctions?
Well, the whole purpose of this is to modify Iranian behavior with respect to its nuclear program in order, the carrot here is to reduce the sanctions burden to permit the Iranian economy to improve, potentially, ostensibly, to give Iran the opportunity to rejoin the community of nations. Look, we're all wide-eyed realists, those of us who've been in the region for long periods of time, that we would like to see Iran change its behavior. It is the principal purveyor of instability in the region and terrorism. They have been for a long time. And I think we have to be very, very cautious and very, very alert in seeing any improvement in Iran ultimately finding its way into an improvement in the capabilities to support terrorism. So we have to watch that. But we've always been watching that, and it's always been a concern for us. But that concern is enormously enhanced when we have to deal with an Iran that is just months away or conceivably could be in possession of a nuclear weapon. And so that's pushed off in time for some period. And we'll, of course, always be very interested in alternative views on how, as this process continues and the conversation continues, on how any potential follow-on agreements could be more effective. But we, in the role I have, we watch closely Iran's activities and behavior in Iraq. We look at it very closely in terms of Syria, which is the principal area in which I'm involved. But we're also watching it very closely in Yemen, in North Africa, conceivably in the western third or so of Afghanistan. So we're going to watch Iran's behavior very, very closely and seek two things: seek to create the conditions where Iran's behavior could be changed for the better, and none of us are betting the farm on that for now. But also seek to create the conditions with our partners and our allies in the regions to permit them to resist Iran's nefarious behavior.
Is there, I mean, given your experience and your knowledge of that behavior on the part of Iran, is it naive for us to think we can change that behavior, or are there some strategies over time that we can use? And you talked about bringing them back into the community of nations. Is that a real possibility in terms of changing behavior, and how do we accomplish that?
The Iranian revolution and the civilian government led by the supreme leader, Khamenei, has in many respects been isolated from the community of nations and the mainstream of the global intercourse, if you will, the economy of nations. And that isolation has really worked to the detriment of the population. But the population of Iran is a really interesting group of people. It's an eclectic, youthful population. Many of them were very young when the revolution occurred or hadn't been born yet. Many of them barely remember the Iran-Iraq War. And many of them see the benefits of the West, both in terms of education, economic opportunity, freedom in their societies. Many of them see those qualities that are available in the West, and they desire them. They want a piece of this. And so as Iran, over time, has to account for this youthful population, that increasingly will have its own opinion about the direction from which Iran has emerged and the direction that Iran should pursue, I think we're going to see changes in Iran's behavior. But there is enormous mistrust in the region of Iran as a revolutionary entity, of Iran as a purveyor of terrorism, as Iran as the signal leader of the Shia bloc of the faith of Islam, attempting to wield the Shia confession in direct opposition to the Sunni confession in the region. That is a vision of Iran that's going to remain firmly fixed, I think, in the minds of many of the leaders in the region for a very long time. And so it's going to require that Iran demonstrate changes in its behavior, not talk about changes in its behavior. And we'll see if they can do that.
All right. Well, I'm always optimistic, but we'll see. All right. We'll be right back with General John Allen.
I think we have we have a real challenge ahead of us, and it's a generational challenge, and it is the challenge of seeking to reduce this thing called violent extremism. It is from the reservoir of violent extremism that organizations like Al-Qaeda have emerged, that Daesh can find its footing, and we saw some of the first vestiges of the potential for addressing the radicalization of populations in the Arab Spring.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. For information about the program, who our upcoming guests and topics are, and ways you can participate, please go to our website. That's harbertv.com. And most of all, thanks for watching. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. It's tough for me to limit myself to 140 characters, but you can see how well I do by following the show on Twitter. Follow me at @Aaron Harber. Welcome back to the show, our final segment with General John Allen, who's also the special presidential envoy leading the global coalition against, I'm going to say Daesh instead of ISIL.
Okay.
When given your just extraordinary experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, other elements of the Middle East, what have you learned? What have you come away with that the American people should know that most of us just don't understand? And I'll cheat a little and encourage you to talk about not just history, but kind of the tribal nature of a lot of the areas we've been in.
I think we have a real challenge ahead of us, and it's a generational challenge, and it is the challenge of seeking to reduce this thing called violent extremism. It is from the reservoir of violent extremism that organizations like Al-Qaeda have emerged, that Daesh can find its footing, and we saw some of the first vestiges of the potential for addressing the radicalization of populations in the Arab Spring. We saw large groups of young men and women across the region who believed that they deserved a better opportunity in life, who had been chafing under generations of leaderships of despots and dictators who had consolidated power and wealth in the hands of very small groups of people. And we began to see, in essence, a groundswell of individuals seeking ultimately to achieve some better potential for themselves and their children and their segments of society. And when you have large segments of society that have been rendered devoid, if you will, of hope, or have been disenfranchised, or who have been denied opportunities, there you see reservoirs of potential radicalization, which has created then the potential for organizations like Al-Qaeda and Daesh to develop. So as I have, and I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East and in East Asia and Southeast Asia, as I have seen what constitutes the creation of insecurity, which ultimately can generate terrorism, which could emerge further as insurgency and then open conventional warfare, it comes from unaddressed social, economic, political, and judicial factors in most of these societies, which create segments of the society that just have no hope. And that ultimately creates the conditions under which we end up in these environments where we are today. And in many respects, the political differences have often played out in attempting to draw distinctions between Shia and Sunni, between tribes, between systems of government. When in fact there is the real potential that tribes can live together and have lived together, confessions have lived together for many, many years, and lived very peacefully together, and the distinctions between whether someone is Shia or Sunni, or someone is a Kurd or an Arab, or someone is a Christian or a Jew, those distinctions are really meaningless in many respects, and have been absorbed within societies for many, many years. It is when it becomes politically expedient to draw the distinctions and ultimately to seek advantage because of those distinctions when we begin to see societies start to take themselves apart and instability emerges. Frustration, great frustration and radicalization can emerge from that, which then creates the platform for Al-Qaeda and Daesh and other organizations like that. So I think we, after 13 years of war and now Daesh up close, we're pursuing, with many of our partners, a long-term strategy to try to get at these underlying circumstances that in the end are the real reason why there's instability. It's not being Shia, it's not being Sunni, it's not being Christian, it's not being Jewish, it's not being Islamic or Muslim. It is these factors, these societal factors, unaddressed over long periods of time in societies led by governments that offer no hope to their people, that create these potential for divisions, which in the aggregate create the platforms ultimately for instability.
Has it been, when you look at Daesh, has it been a mistake for us to support some of these nations, some of these leaders, some of these governments that have subjected their people to the kind of conditions that you just referred to?
Well, I think as history unfolds, as we seek to achieve in partnership with many of these countries an improvement in the region or the society, what we find over time is that some of these governments didn't fulfill the needs of their people. And I think the Arab Spring has proven that pretty decisively for us. And so we're very careful about the regimes that we will support. But many of these regimes are traditional, and it's important for us to understand that there is the potential for progress, but we have to recognize how we can support them in achieving that progress without inherently destabilizing the regime as we move forward. That requires us to understand a great deal about the region, about tribalism, about the faith of Islam and the confessions of Islam. And as we do that, and as we shape our foreign policy with that clear understanding of the region, it makes us a more effective partner as we seek partnerships in the region that can, in the end, create societies that are based on the rule of law and equality, opportunities for women. All of those things are objectives that we have, but we also have to recognize that these are sometimes very ancient and very traditional societies, and social progress for them looks different than perhaps it looks for us, and the timeline might be longer, but we should never fall off of our standards. And we should always seek to hold those standards up as a part of the relationship that we have with them. And I think we've made progress in many respects. And some of that progress has been most graphically demonstrated by the reality of what Daesh has become, and all of us must face that reality and then be honest with ourselves about how an organization like Daesh could begin.
All right. General, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you, Aaron.
That was General John Allen. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.